Welcome to the Potter discussion.
Welcome back to the Potter discussion. This is episode 104, and on today's episode we will be dissecting the Battle of the Order of the Phoenix. Let's do this. Hello, welcome back. Today I am so excited because, I know I say that every week, but today I am especially excited because we have a new series and we are kicking this series off with probably my favorite scene in the entire Harry Potter movies on screen. That is right. So, the scene that I am talking about is the Battle of the Order of the Phoenix. I have said it many times before, that is a filmmaking masterpiece. Everything to do with that scene is fantastic, and today I will be breaking it down and dissecting and examining everything to do with that scene just to see what is inside. And I'm very excited. This is a new series, SlowMo. So, if you like this series, at the very end of the episode, if you would care to send me an email, thepotterdiscussion@gmail.com. That is thepotterdiscussion@gmail.com for anything, any opinions, any questions about the series, any scenes you want me to do. So, anything you want to say about the episode, thepotterdiscussion@gmail.com. And I know the fancy intro music isn't there anymore. YouTube didn't like it, so apparently unfortunately we are back to the regular one, but it is great music, so I'm not disappointed, but no more fancy music. But on that note, I think we should get started. Actually, before we get started, I will remind you that the two links in the show notes below are still available. If you want to send any questions, comments, topics, feedback, if you have any Quizmaster questions, jokes, breakdowns, flip the scripts, or slow-mos, definitely use those two links. The list just keeps getting longer and longer. I have to remember all of these different things. So any of those things, definitely use those two links. And again, the Potter discussion @gmail.com, thepotterdiscussion@gmail.com. Again, anything you want to do. So yeah, I'm excited. Without further ado, this is SlowMo, the Battle of the Order of the Phoenix. Okay, so for the first talking point, I think it's definitely good to just get a quick overview of the scene. If you haven't, if you have it in your mind, definitely be keeping track of what's happening. And if you don't, I would definitely recommend watching it. I will include a link to a video of this scene in the show notes. If you're watching on YouTube, it will pop up in the corner. So definitely make sure that you know what's going on in this scene because it is very important. But if you don't, if you're still driving, if you're still running, if you're still walking, you don't want to stop, I will just give you a quick overview of what this scene entails. So just so you know, we are going from the moment Harry and his friends jump out the door and land in the Chamber of Death to when the battle is kind of winding down and Harry runs to get Bellatrix. I know it would be great to include the previous scenes, and I think that is an upcoming SlowMo, because although including the battle of Dumbledore and Voldemort would be great, the episode would just become 3 hours long, and because that's another one of my favorite scenes. So I think we can do the meat of this scene, and then we can kind of work around this particular part of the fifth movie. So, but just for today, we are going from when Harry jumps out the door and his friends, and then until he runs after Bellatrix. So it starts off with, surprise, surprise, Harry and his friends jumping out the door. Ginny just cast her favorite spell, and now the whole place is coming down People are running everywhere, and Ginny is like looking like uh-oh, and Harry and all of his friends are running like crazy back to the door. They open it, and it's not a door, it is a big hole into a cave. So they all fall down into the cave, and then Hermione does a fancy Arresto Momentum, and they all slow down, and they hit the ground. It's so amazing. And then they get back up, and Harry's like, the voices, can you hear them? And then Luna's like, of course I can. And Harry's like, right, I'm crazy. And then the Death Eaters come, and Harry's like, get behind me! And he's moving his wand around so much, I don't know why. And then the Death Eaters come, and Harry is just clutching the prophecy, trying to, I don't know, keep it safe, and then making sure his friends are okay. And then when all the black swirling cloaks stop. And by the way, I thought that those were Dementors. Honestly, the first time I saw that, I knew they were Death Eaters, but they look so much like Dementors. I just don't know why. They just look so much like Dementors, like with the back of their cloaks. I think especially when you see them kind of flicking away, it's like very ripped and just kind of old and stuff like that. It's a very Dementor-like cloak to wear. So it's just a side note. But anyway, when the Death Eaters wearing Dementor cloaks take all of Harry's friends away except for Harry, and they kind of go into a circle, and then Malfoy comes up, and he's doing his classic Malfoy thing. His cane is echoing menacingly off of the walls, and he goes up above Harry on the hill, and then he's like, do you really think that you children could beat us? Which was a very funny scene. And then Harry gives him the prophecy, and I always think it's Malfoy. Draco Malfoy, Lucius, gets the prophecy and is like, the weird moment. And I actually thought that was a weird scene, and it might, I'm sure they did this on purpose, but when Harry gives Lucius the prophecy, it turns darker. It turns a darker shade, and I was thinking that's kind of a nod to the books, because only when the person who the prophecy was about could get it, pick it up. And I think that was, they had to have Lucius hold it at some point, so giving him the prophecy in that moment I think was smart, but then also kind of acknowledging the fact that maybe he couldn't in the books and kind of making it a little darker. So when you watch this scene again, just notice when Lucius picks up the prophecy, it is a little darker than when Harry's holding it. But Lucius picks up the prophecy from Harry. He's so proud of himself. He does his small little Lucius, creepy breath celebration. And then we see a flash of white out of the corner of our eye. And what is it? It's Sirius. I was going to say Siri. No, it's Sirius. It's Sirius, and he goes, get away from my godson, and then the whole thing starts. So then the epic music, again, that music is fantastic. It's so intense, and it really fits the scene. So Lucius gets blasted away, and he's still around. But then the rest of the Order arrives, and that is really one of my favorite parts of the scene. Just to, the music was great, and then the kind of go from dark and dank, in the chamber to all these bright lights, flashing, and all the friendly faces, people that we know from the Order are coming to kind of save the day. It's a really well thought out scene, and especially with they're called Death Eaters, but the Death Eaters, they were not expecting at all, and the shock, the actors really did a great job reacting to the Order arriving, and all of the different, the bright white lights and all the different ways they landed. I think it really shows their character. Kingsley landed on a rock, and his chin held high in the air, and Moody just landed already, taking out his wand, ready to go. And Tonks landed, and she was running around, not knowing where he was doing. And then Lupin landed too, and he was he knew what was going on, and he was ready. So we saw that whole thing happening, and that was great. And then the whole thing starts. There are duels happening everywhere. And Harry and his friends are helped to, not Harry, Harry's friends are helped to a little, rock alcove by the Order, just so they are safe. And Harry and Sirius are behind a rock, a good old rock. And Sirius says, you've done beautifully, but you have to go now. And then Harry goes, no, I want to fight. And Sirius is like, no, you have to go. And then he's cut off by a spell. And get the sound Gary Oldman made, and that I was like, wow, that was great acting. He was like, I'm really bad at it, but you get the idea. It was really funny the way he did that, and so like when you watch the scene, there's so many things you should look out for, but that is one of them. But it's so funny. But yeah, so great scene, a great sound, and then they're back. They're back off, and Harry and Lucius are kind of battling. Not Harry and Lucius. Sirius and Lucius are battling, and then another Death Eater jumps into the, like, literally jumps, somehow jumps really high into the battle, and then Harry starts doing that Death Eater, and then eventually the Death Eater that Harry's doing casts a good spell, and Sirius blocked it with his arm. Yikes. And then the whole thing happens, and then Harry disarms the Death Eater he was dueling, and Sirius says, "Nice one, James." We'll get back to that one. And then Lucius, and then Harry, I think, disarms Lucius. And then Lucius holds up his hand. He's like, no. And then Sirius does his fancy twirly wand underhand thing. And Lucius goes flying. Then, I think the climax of this whole thing is when Bellatrix lands from her fly session and says, "Avada Kedavra!" And Sirius is dead. He gets hit with a curse. And Harry is like, it's like it's a really bad example, but his shock is just so apparent. And then Sirius falls through the veil and is taken away. And then Lupin grabs Harry. It's so silent, so dramatic. And then Harry breaks away from Lupin, and he runs towards Bellatrix. He wants revenge. And then Bellatrix is looking at him, shaking her head. Silly boy. And she runs away, and Harry chases after her. And that is the scene that we will be breaking down today. I mean, I don't know. I should go on Broadway. That was pretty theatrical, pretty great. I hope you would agree. But now we can start breaking down this scene. So let's get straight into it. So the first part of the scene is Harry giving the prophecy to Lucius. That's really where this whole thing starts. And I think the big, kind of message that was trying to be conveyed here was the fact that Harry is willing to do anything for his friends, and it was his loyalty to his friends that allowed their lives to be spared. And that's really the first thing that we're going to be talking about, Harry's loyalty to his friends and how it saved their lives. So, I think this is a good example of kind of the sides of good and evil really stressing their strengths. So, Lucius kind of, jabbing at Harry, talking about how the Death Eaters would always beat them, and then him kind of going above Harry and saying, give me the prophecy or your friends will die. And that's really where kind of the evil in him comes out, where he's threatening children's lives just to get something he wants. And that's really where Harry's goodness comes into play, where Harry is thinking, like, of course, I have to give him prophecy. And it's a big decision, but in the end, of course, Harry does give Lucius the prophecy. Now, I don't know what would have happened if he didn't. I know in this scenarios, I am always thinking, like, what if he didn't? I think Harry's friends would have died, and then, I mean, it's sad, but I'm sorry for being blunt, but I think it's true. Harry's friends would not have made it out, and Lucius would have then dueled Harry would have lost, and then the prophecy would have been there. So it's really a lose-lose scenario, and I think with Harry giving Lucius the prophecy, that is a great point for Harry to kind of reflect back on and be thinking about when he leaves that place and when he goes to Hogwarts, when he goes back to Hogwarts. So that's really like something for Harry to be thinking about, what would have happened if I didn't, and the fact that good came out of it because he did. So that is a good example of how Harry's goodness and Lucius's evil really came into play. Next up, we have the arrival of the Order and why the prophecy breaking wasn't focused on more. So, when Harry gives Lucius the prophecy, he has his creepy celebration thing, and then the Order arrives, the bright flash of light, as we talked about before. Sirius comes up, "Get out of my godson!" And then I mean, I'm a pretty good Sirius impressionist, if I say so myself. Get out of my godson! There you go. Hope you enjoyed that. Okay, so I don't know what I'm doing anymore. All right, we're back to the episode. So. The Order arrived and the prophecy breaks, and why was that not focused on more? Well, okay, I think we should start with the arrival of the Order. So, the Order of the Phoenix arrives, and that is a very meaningful scene because it's very good symbolism for, I know, fancy word symbolism, for the good guys to arrive and kind of defeat evil right when the time is needed. And I know that it is a kind of I don't know what you would call it. It's a very, very common thing to do, but I was kind of thinking is not only does it reflect the end of the book and kind of the, classic hero archetype, it also reflects a moment in the 7th book when Harry is going into the forest. This is probably only me, but I noticed that when the Order arrives, we see Lupin, we see Sirius, and Sirius says, "Nice one, James." And I think this is kind of a callback to the Prisoner of Azkaban when, all of the Marauders walked on the Hogwarts grounds tonight. That whole thing. And then also in the future books, in the 7th book, when Harry's about to die and he uses the Resurrection Stone to see his family one more time, I think that was really foreshadowing to see heading straight into evil and giving something away of yourself. And that's what Harry did. Harry, in the 7th book, gave away his life. And in the 5th book, he gave away the prophecy. And in the 5th book, then his family and his friends arrived, and he found the strength to overcome what was ahead of him. And in the 7th book, his family friends appeared, and he found the strength to overcome what was ahead of him. You see a theme? Do you see a theme here? And so I think the arrival of the Order of the Phoenix was definitely more of a showing of, the good guys are here, all rejoice kind of thing. So that was kind of, I think, what that scene was really going for. And then for the breaking of the prophecy, I was really wondering, why was that not focused on more? I mean, it's the prophecy. They went through all that trouble to get it, and then they're just 2 seconds of a shot of just Lucius going for it, it breaks, like, that's it. And then it cuts away and we never hear of it again. Like, what was that? In the 5th book, it was this whole deal. And Lucius, dropped the prophecy, and then Harry could see like a figure rising, and he couldn't quite make out the words, and he was so frustrated, so he tried to run closer, but he couldn't, and the battle was like raging on. So in the book, it was so much more intense. The breaking of the prophecy wasn't just the breaking of the prophecy, it was the breaking of Harry's answer, the breaking of what Harry had come there to do, to get. And in the movie, it was just a quick little, just a quick little tinkle of glass, and then cut away, and we never heard of it again. Like, why? Well, I think the answer to that is the filmmakers were going in a different direction. The prophecy was a huge deal in the books. I mean, why am I forgetting it? I think it's one can't live while the other survives, or one has to live with it. It's something like that. And the prophecy is a huge deal in the books, because that's like, they're trying to figure that out, is it about Voldemort? And then we find out it's about Neville, and like a whole deal. But I think in the movie, the filmmakers really wanted to focus more on the rising of Voldemort and really bringing that aspect to life. And I think that's mostly because it is so much easier and so much more powerful to show kind of the rising of evil on screen than it is to show the distress of a glass ball with smoke inside of it breaking. So it's much more difficult to convey that meaning and that, the hugeness of what just happened. So if we see kind of break, and that's kind of a moment of, in the movie, it was more used as a moment of like the tide is turning. Lucius's first fail is upon him, and there'll be many more to come. I think that's kind of what that scene was really going for. And the prophecy, I think, is a huge deal in the books, not in the movies, just because of that. Because it's so much more difficult to convey the meaning of the prophecy breaking in the movies than it was in the books. And it's so much easier and more powerful to show the rising of evil in the movies. And it is much more sensible to do something that can be, understood by people who hadn't read the books and watched the movies. So that is a very interesting scene, a part of the scene that I think is definitely a good part of it. And next up, we have probably the most confusing part of this scene. If you'll believe me, I think the most complicated part of this scene is... Nice one, James! Come on. Oh, come on. That was good. That was good. You have to admit it, that was good. Alright? Alright. I will assume that you thought that was the best impression you've ever heard of Sirius, so thank you for that. I'll accept my trophy, and let's move on. But, yeah. So, the nice one, James. I think that was really weird because it was so out of the blue, confusing, kinda what the heck is happening type thing. Because, come on. Nice one, James. Like, what are we supposed to do with that? And, Harry's expression, definitely, Harry's expression, that was perfect. That was exactly what everyone was thinking. He was just like, looking at you, like, what? Like, what? What the heck? Like, nice one, James. What am I gonna do with that? Maybe it's just me, but I feel like Harry's expressions kind of really told the story, and that's a really, Harry Potter type thing. And yeah, so nice one, James. What could that mean? Everything that all of my notes on this scene is just nice one, James! Exclamation point. That's it. That's all I have. So I'm going off of this with nothing. So I think this was a semi-mistake by Sirius. Not the actor, but by the Sirius, the character. I think that because Harry is very much like James. And as Sirius really sees James and Harry as evidenced by his wanting to induct him into the order and Molly's, absolute nah. I don't know what the word is. It just didn't come to me in the moment. Her absolute nah, bro. So Molly saw Harry and Sirius sees James, two very prominent sides of Harry. And in this moment, when they were dueling together, when they were, dominating against the bad guys, their annoying opponents, I think Sirius really saw James in that moment. And it's not a bad thing, I'll tell you that. James was a little, mean to several Snape people, and he was also a little rude, and I didn't really think of, the pros and cons of what he was doing. But it definitely worked out for him. And I think Sirius saw that in Harry when they were dueling together, just their domination over the people who had wronged them and their working togetherness being so perfect and they just being the perfect match. I think that's what Sirius was seeing, and that's why he called Harry James. Sirius saw James in Harry because they were doing what Sirius did with James. They were dueling other people. They were winning. They were working together, and that is a good thing. I think Sirius seeing James and Harry really means that Harry is living up to be a great person with Sirius. And it's not a great person in general, it's a great person with Sirius. So, not necessarily with the whole, James not being a great person, whole thing. So Harry is very much like Harry in the sense that he's a good person, but he is like James in the sense that he works well with Sirius. He likes people, and he will definitely take a swing, or he'll definitely take a spell if someone gets in his way. So hopefully that's that confusion cleared up of the... ready? Nice one, James! You can just do with that whatever you will, but I don't know why. I don't know why, I can tell you that, but it's just like these like one lines that I just love. There's some that are just like so fun to say, and I mean someday I should just do a whole impression episode, just like all the impressions that I love, all the different lines that are great and trying to say them. I should do that. I should do that sometime. That's going on the list. Impressions episode. All right, I'm remembering that, but we still do have a couple talking points of this episode, so I should not get carried away with the impressions just yet. And right after the... No, I'm not gonna... You thought I was gonna do it, but I didn't. Right after the nice one, James, comes Siriuss's death. They defeat Lucius and the Death Eater, and Bellatrix lands and goes, Avada Kedavra! And Sirius is gone. So much to this scene. There is so much packed into, like 20 seconds. What I saw in this scene was Harry seeing his childhood, his parents, the last remnant of the past that he had, like going away, dying, being taken from him. And I think, of course, Sirius as a person was amazing to Harry. And Harry is seeing the death of Sirius, but he's also seeing the death of his parents, the last remnant, the last close remnant that he had besides Lupin, gone. Like that's just like something that's like really difficult. It's like when you, I don't know, this is a pretty bad analogy, but like that like theory, if you like have a boat and you replace all the parts of the boat, is it the same boat? And some might say yes, some might say no, but this is kind of the case in this scene. Sirius dies and Harry still has those memories, but without Sirius, are they really the same? It's always James and Sirius, but now is it just? And then when James died, it was just Sirius. And now what is it? Is it nothing? Is it no one? I think that's kind of what Harry was struggling with. It went from James and Sirius to no one. How does that work? How does someone else fill that gap? I think Lupin tried, but he recognized that he would never be James or Sirius. So I think it was very, very difficult for Harry to kind of see that. It was very difficult for Harry to kind of be thinking about his future and how that might not be connected to the past. That was really the moment Harry had to let go of his feelings. That's really the moment Harry had to let go of everything that he had been holding on to, just because everything that he had been holding on to was already gone. And Harry didn't know that. But now that he does, that is really the turning point of Harry really trying to get at Voldemort, really trying to win, and actively attempting to actually kill Voldemort. And later, when Harry's going after Bellatrix, you could see that Bellatrix had definitely made a mistake in killing Sirius, because Harry was ready to kill her. Harry, I think, if Harry had the power, and if, I'm sure he did in that moment, but if Harry was left and Voldemort hadn't come, I seriously think that in a moment like that, Harry would have killed Bellatrix. And call me crazy, but I don't know if he would have done it, which is a simple spell. I think he would have done some torturing stuff. He might have done some, crazy shenanigans. But I do think if Harry had been left alone with Bellatrix couldn't fight back, Harry would have killed her. Which is a huge thing to realize, because, Harry Potter, the good guy, killing someone? That is just crazy. But on that note, I think we should wrap it up with just one more talking point, then we'll close out this episode. And that talking point is how this whole battle reflects the story. We will be dipping into either side of this scene, but it is not too far, except for on the back end. So, how does this scene reflect the story? Well, we start with Harry and his friends in the place they want to be, in the place they went to, and that is the Hall of Prophecies. It's also in the story. They were in Hogwarts first years, learning stuff, being happy. Then the Death Eaters came, the evil came, and that was really Voldemort in Quirrell, and really chased Harry and his friends out of the sanctuary they were in, and that kind of led to them falling to this dank dark cave, and then all the Death Eaters followed them, which was kind of crazy. And then, because that really reflects the third book when the Death Eaters start to rise, and the fourth book when Voldemort comes back. And I think the whole Voldemort coming back thing is reflected by the Death Eaters kind of taking Harry's friends and them kind of doing that whole thing, which is pretty scary. And then in the fifth book, I think the reflection of the Order of the Phoenix fighting back is when the Order of the Phoenix arrives at the Battle of the Order of the Phoenix. And that is very reflective because it shows how the good guys swoop in to defeat the bad guys when Harry needs it the most. And that whole duel is reflecting the battle the Order of the Phoenix is having over, this year of the fifth year in trying to defeat Voldemort. And then Bellatrix kills Sirius. And I think this I'm cheating here, but it kind of does reflect itself, which I think is kind of a weird thing to say, but it is definitely reflecting itself. Sirius's death is a very good marker of Sirius's death. And then Bellatrix runs into the cavern, into the Great Hall. Not the Great Hall. It is a very great hall, but the not entrance hall. What's the name? The atrium. And Harry follows her. And I think, yes, as I said before, Harry would have killed Bellatrix if he had a chance, but it's when he was stopped. I think that's reflective of in the sixth book when he was chasing after the Death Eaters after they killed Dumbledore, and Harry was kind of left alone to do something, but he didn't. Then Dumbledore and Voldemort arrive. They have this whole big duel. I think that's kind of reflective of the very end, the whole big battle. And then I think probably the one that I see the most is a little out of order, but I see when Dumbledore and Voldemort cast that spell. So where Dumbledore casts his, or Voldemort casts his black, the black clouds is just shoot at Dumbledore. Then Dumbledore has his blue light that keeps the black cloud away. I think that's reflective of, well, not a lot, but then then Voldemort takes that energy and blasts it out. And then he takes all the shards of glass that exploded away from the windows and shoots it at Harry and Dumbledore. And this is really where I see all the stories that Harry was supposed to know. All these shards of glass are the stories that Harry was supposed to learn and Dumbledore shielded him from. And Dumbledore does just that. He takes his wand, he casts a blue light again, and all those shards of glass, all those sharp stories, all those things that Harry doesn't need to know get poofed into sand. And that is where Harry sees the whole picture. That's where Harry sees everything, and that's where the story ends. And that is where the scene ends. So I think that's good. And if I was rushing a tiny bit, just because this is actually my second take of this part of the episode, just because my software force quit itself, and I was having a heart attack because I thought this whole episode didn't get saved, but luckily it did, right up to the Bellatrix part, and then I was so worried, but luckily everything's good. This is the second take, and I want to get the whole thing done before it does, but I think you got some good value out of this, which I am very grateful of, because I also did. I love the scene, and I'm very excited to be doing more slow-mos in the future. The question this week is, what do you see in Sirius's death, and how do you think this scene would have been different if Harry had left when Sirius told him to? And also, I would love to hear your Sirius impressions, so use the voice submission link if you want to send me that. I would love to hear your voice, so send me an impression of Sirius or any other character you want me to hear using that link. I would love to hear what you have to say, and it helps me out a ton. It don't take a minute of your time. It is free, and I would love to hear what you have to say. All right, I think that's good. Again, anything else you wanted to tell me, thepotterdiscussion@gmail.com. That is thepotterdiscussion@gmail.com. And I think that is the episode. Thank you so much for listening. As always, use this information to your advantage, and I will see you later.
This was the Potter Discussion.